And this is the time that I found out that her sex tape is dedicated to the victims of 9/11? Mechanic cosplay engaged. Let's get this motherfucking train on the motherfucking track, bitch. Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Carly, and today we're going to be talking about Paris Hilton's memoir. She recently released a memoir called Paris, a Memoir, and I read it in 24 hours. That is how I choose to spend my miracle of a life. Basically, I choose to waste hours of my day reading celebrity memoirs. You know how Walt Whitman said that the meaning of life is that you are here and life exists and that the powerful play goes on and you may contribute a verse? My verse is making YouTube videos about celebrity memoirs. And that's my cross to bear. Okay, just a couple things before we get started. I'm gonna walk you through the entire book, the parts that I found to be of note. First thing, trigger warning. Oh my God, trigger warning. Paris went to a boarding school for troubled teens, which is basically institutionalized centers of abuse where children are subjected to sexual, emotional, and physical abuse. Those are going to be explained and talked about in this book and in this video. And if that is something that you do not want to hear about, I would suggest that you sit this one out and maybe don't read the book. Second, I really liked this book. I think it is one of the best celebrity memoirs I've read recently. I don't have a lot of stake in the game in terms of Paris as a person. I don't know a lot about her, but I found this memoir to be incredibly interesting. She's got a great voice. She's very candid and talks a lot about the actual issues that she had in her life. And she has a great perspective on things. It really seems like she's not just telling you these stories about her life. She's also reflected on them and has really interesting things to say about how she was definitely a victim of misogyny in society at the time. And like what that means for her. I thought that was really interesting. That being said, I'm going to walk you through this book, but if you want to read this book, you 100% should. I'm not going to be able to hit every single plot point, and there's a lot here that's really good, so I would definitely recommend you should read it. Let's get into it. Hey, you know what's also hot? Learning another language.
That's hot.
But if you want to learn another language, broaden your horizons, or just challenge that beautiful big brain of yours, why not use this video's sponsor, Lingoda. Lingoda is an online language school that focuses on human interaction and maximum conversation time. Quick little backstory on my language journey, I guess. I am a messy North American, and I know one language, and that language is English. And despite the fact that my mother is fluent in French and a French teacher. But this May, I am going on a trip to Berlin, Germany, and I wanted to learn just a little bit of German so, I could order a coffee. I've been taking the classes for a moment now. Lingoda offers online classes 24/7 with professional teachers. It's awesome. You can just fit it into your schedule whenever works for you. Also, Lingoda does sprints, which is a fun little way to incentivize your brain. So if you sign up for their super sprint, where you take 30 classes per month for 2 months, you get 100% of your money back. If that's a little difficult for you and you're like, you can also just do a regular sprint where you take 15 classes per month for 2 months. And if you complete that, you get 50% of your money back. If you're looking to learn a language, hone a language you already speak, or just try something new, the Lingoda language sprint is exactly what you need to stay motivated and committed to your goals. Girl boss it. If you want more information or you just want to jump on in, go to the link in my description below.
Use the code uncarley2023 to get 20 euros or $25 off your first sprint. Again, that is the code uncarley2023 for 20 euros or $25 off your first sprint registration.
Thank you so much, Lingoda, for sponsoring this video, or as they say in Germany, Danke, Lingoda. The prologue of this book is basically Paris talking about her adult ADHD diagnosis. I have ADHD. I was diagnosed when I was 15. Very happy for her to get this diagnosis. She definitely explains ADHD in the context of how it affects her and her relationship with Carter. Carter is her husband, and he is a rich man. I don't really know what he does. You know, when like you start getting like into really rich people, their jobs don't really describe what they do. Like it makes no sense. Like if somebody's a bus driver or a teacher, the name explains what the job is. When you get to being kind of like weird board member, millionaire, old money people, it's like chief COVID drawback market consultant, whatever. He's rich, okay? My ADHD makes me lose my phone, but it also makes me who I am. So if I'm going to love my life, I have to love my ADHD. Carter doesn't fully grasp what it means to be ADHD, but he's the first and only man in my life who has made an effort to understand. Early in our relationship, he spent a lot of time and energy researching ADHD, which is the most authentically loving thing any man has ever done for me. Where most people see a dumpster fire, Carter sees Burning Man. She brings up ADHD in the prologue basically as a means of explaining why the format of the book and the grammar might be a little different. She's going to tell things maybe out of order or go down little tangents and get distracted. She loves run-on sentences, stuff like that. This is my brain. It has a lot to do with how this whole book thing is going to play out because I love run-on sentences and dashes and sentence fragments. I'm probably going to jump around a lot while I tell this story. She also does what I do really appreciate and doesn't call ADHD a superpower. There is something that neurotypical people are fucking obsessed with, and that's kind of telling people with ADHD that the disorder that makes their lives very difficult is actually a superpower, and it's actually your fault for not being positive and seeing it as a superpower. Now, the first part of the book is basically about her childhood and early life. She opens up with an anecdote about her 21st birthday, which leads into then her tales of loving partying to then becoming kind of like a club kid, getting kicked out of schools, things like that. This whole entire part basically leads up to the very end of her childhood where at 15 or 16, she was sent away to a boarding school for troubled teens, and things get pretty dark and bad from there. But her 21st birthday started out in LA, then everyone went to New York, then everyone went to Paris, then everyone went to Tokyo, and then everyone went back to LA. Taylor Swift in her private jet, wish they could do this. Drake shaking in his boots. Your 21st birthday is prime real estate for stupid. A lot of stupid things you do in your 20s lay the foundation for wisdom later on. As you wise up, you realize that all the stupid things you didn't do, those are the regrets. My 20s were like, damn girl, leave no stupid behind. Love the wrong men. Hate the wrong women. Wear the Von Dutch. She goes into her childhood. She says, one of my earliest memories is sitting on Andy Warhol's lap, drawing pictures at an after party at the Waldorf Astoria. He loved me and always told my mom, this kid is going to be a huge star, which is insane. It's insane to me that Andy Warhol and Paris Hilton met. Early in her life, she was interested in basically becoming a model. She started going to clubs and getting photographed by the paparazzi outside of clubs. At 18, I signed with a modeling agency. And what do you think people want to do after a runway show? Party with models. It's easy to think no duh, but move past the easy assumption that men are pigs and models are dumb. But that's not fair or true or useful. Most men are basically decent, I think, and successful models travel all over the world. Traveling the world is the best education there is. Most models are in their teens and 20s, and sometimes that lack of maturity shows, but they're growing. Give them a minute. And I just thought that was a nice paragraph. There's these really cool moments of great self-awareness and compassion. Like as we go through this book, you realize that like Paris, for, a white affluent woman, has had it pretty tough. She's suffered a lot. The entire time I was reading this book, I was like, if this happened to me, I don't know if I would have the capacity for empathy and kindness that Paris shows to other people. I didn't invent getting paid to party, but I reinvented it. I'm proud to be called the OG influencer. Girls need to understand the value they bring to the party. It's a lot more than standing around and looking pretty. And this is it begins like a tangent of party girl empowerment. I will say in the last week or so, my self-confidence has been in the gutter. So if you want to leave a mean comment, please don't. Just not right now. And reading this chapter in this book in whole, I was like, I do feel empowered. She does have an incredibly positive energy, and she makes you feel good. Like she makes you feel hot reading this book. Know your worth, girls. You're not lucky to be at the party. The party is lucky to have you. Apply as needed to relationships, jobs, and family. So then basically at the end of her 21st birthday, she's like going on this full like rager, and they go skydiving the next day and she's really scared. This is kind of a long-winded, convoluted metaphor for being like when you're in the plane going to a skydive and you open the door, the air gets sucked out. So you're afraid to open the door because once you open the door, all this shit's gonna come out. We all have that jump door inside of us. And for a long time, I marked mine with red letters, all caps. This door must remain closed. Brace yourself, bitches. We're about to pry it open. So now we're just continuing in on her life story, right? I was born in New York City on February 17th, 1981. 6 months later, MTV made its official debut with Video Killed the Radio Star. It all adds up. Iconic. I needed to include this passage because it sent chills up my spine. Shivers. So Paris loves animals and she had rats growing up. And I do know that rats are incredibly intelligent and clean pets and people love them. A panic response is still enacted in me when I see someone with a rat. There was a child that I knew growing up who had a rat that would just sit in their little pocket, like right here, and just chill. And I'll never recover from that. I had a whole community of rats named after all the people from 90210. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Like rats? But domesticated rats are actually very clean, sweet, and intelligent. I had a huge rat named Max who had enormous balls. One day when I was out in the yard cuddling Max, a ferret ran over to me and poor Max screamed this bizarrely loud scream with his little rat mouth wide open, and then he bit me. I dropped him and he ran off, waddling up the driveway as fast as he could with his weirdly large balls bouncing away. Like, what is this book? I don't know. I started crying, not because I was hurt, but because I thought I'd lost him. Max, I sat down on the driveway sobbing. Max looked over his shoulder at me and came waddling back. I scooped him up in my arms and kissed him and told him I wasn't mad. He seemed deeply embarrassed about the whole incident. Rats are so sweet. I should get another rat. Note to Carter, birthday rat. So if you didn't know, Paris Hilton is very famous for her catchphrase, "That's hot." She said it a bunch in The Simple Life. It's an iconic catchphrase that remains, at least to me, culturally relevant to this day. Everything's hot to me. She basically just said it about everything. She'd see like a pile of loose hair on the ground and say, "That's hot." At some point, I heard Nikki, her sister, say, "That's hot," and it resonated with me. I wrote it in my diary and doodled flowers and fireworks around it. It's such a great statement, isn't it? Positive, unpretentious. The word hot is evocative. There's energy in it. Hot pink, hot shit, the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Now we're getting into some really tough subject matter about Paris as a child being sexualized by the men in her life. This is when she was in 8th grade, so like 13, maybe 14. When the yearbook came out, all the 8th graders were pictured in our caps and gowns, and my picture was captioned, "Finest girl." Fine, like hot, like sexy. I was the sexiest of the 8th grade girls because sexy 8th grader, that's a thing, right? So first of all, what the fuck? What school is this? What the fuck? That's so incredibly fucked. And then Paris details an experience in which she gets groomed by her teacher. "I've got a crush on you," he said, flashing a flirty smile. He flattered me and teased me and said all the other girls were talking about me behind my back because they were jealous of my hotness. Jail? Because their boyfriends probably wanted to break up with them the second I walked into the room. He asked for my private phone number and cautioned me not to tell anyone. "It's our secret," he said. Jail. He reminded me that Princess Diana was 13 years younger than Prince Charles, and Priscilla Presley was my age when Elvis fell in love with her. Also a crime. And one night he showed up at her house when her parents weren't there and he got caught kissing her by her father. Fuck, Mr. Abercrombie sounded like he was crying. My life is over. Why am I doing this? Why did you make me do this? Good. It's good to blame a child. It's so troubling and disgusting, then truly giving all readers whiplash. She switches from the story of horrifying abuse to talk about the term sliving, which is a term she's copyrighted, that's a combination of slaying and living. I could not believe we switched to it. It made me laugh out loud. It's like a horrible story about abuse where you're like, oh my God, this is so tough. And then she's like, so anyways, sliving is a word I invented a few years ago at a Halloween party. I started to say slaying, but took a sharp left towards living, and sliving came out. Then, at the end of 8th grade, Paris was kicked out of her school, and she went to live with her grandmother. The rest of her family, while she was in LA, moved back to New York and sent her to live with her grandmother. I was devastated to learn that my family had moved back to New York City without me. I was not a bad girl. I could be mouthy sometimes, uncooperative, and stubborn. In other words, I was 14. If your 14-year-old kid walks around like a perfect little angel all the time, they should probably be tested for Lyme disease, which is pretty fucking funny. I was like, Paris Hilton is funny. Then she details another horrifying story in which she and a friend were hanging out at the mall and 2 grown men approached them, gained their trust over the course of weeks, took them back to the apartment and drugged them and SA'd them. Horrifying, horrible story. It's a deeply troubling book. Things like what happened to me don't happen in a vacuum. Somewhere I'm certain there are many other women trying to forget the bad dream of that apartment. Maybe if one of them had told someone, it wouldn't have happened to me. And maybe if I had told someone, it wouldn't have happened to somebody else. That's why I'm telling you now, because shame is dangerous, poisonous, and not just for those who carry it. And then she goes on to talk about how this shame affected her because If you did not know, Paris Hilton, when she was becoming famous, around when she was like 23, a sex tape she had made in private with a partner when she was 19 years old was leaked, and she was basically shamed by all of society for it. Who's more generous, evolved, and progressive than Pink? Nobody. She's effing awesome, and she seems like a great mom, which makes me like and respect her even more. But when everyone was buzzing about a sex tape of a certain teenage girl from a soon-to-be hit TV show, a girl who said over and over she did not want the tape out there, the takeaway was stupid girl. The whole video is a not at all subtle send-up of porno paparazzi girls in general, and specifically me, in a parody of my infamous sex tape. That tape I made when I was not legally old enough to be served a rum and coke at a bar was released and monetized against my will. But when that thing hit the internet, the full weight of the public outrage, scorn, and disgust came down on me instead of on a massive crowd of people who bought and sold it, sparking a steady drip of fake Paris Hilton sex tapes and blazing a trail for a whole cottage industry that would ruin the lives of other vulnerable teenage girls in the future. Pink sang about outcasts and girls with ambition and said, "That's what I want to see." But she chose not to see it in me. You know what I mean? She could just, it's so well done. I read that and I had chills. I was like, I'm not expecting this level of perspective from a celebrity memoir at all points. Oftentimes it feels very much like a cash grab, just like, here are the things that happened to me. I have no perspective on them and I don't understand them, but here are the things that happened to me. As opposed to this where it's like Paris is putting it in the context of society at the time and trying to explain that she was the victim of this mass misogynistic public shaming for a sex tape that she did not intend to be public and was monetized against her will, and saying that like other women were at the helm of that abuse. Crazy. It was after this when she moved to New York with her family. She got in trouble with her mother for sneaking out at night and going to clubs to dance and being caught by the paparazzi. And this basically led up to her getting kicked out of a bunch of schools And this is when her parents decided to send her to Provo Canyon, which is a set of abusive boarding schools that troubled teens and children are sent to, where they are subjected to abuse and under the guise of giving them structure. I'm making a real effort to understand what this situation was like for my parents, because I will never understand what they chose to do about it. To save your baby, you'd do it, Mom says on the rare occasion she's willing to talk about it. Not in a million fucking years, I think, but I don't say that out loud. I don't have it in me to argue with her because I can't bear the thought of anything that will separate me from my family ever again. Instead, I put my arms around her neck and say the one true thing I can. I love you, Mom. I was sound asleep at about 4:30 in the morning when my bedroom door crashed open and someone tore the covers off me. A thick hand grabbed my ankle and dragged me off the mattress. I was instantly awake, hyper awake, in a state of panic, shrieking and struggling. My mind instantly went to the obvious. I'm about to be murdered. He said, "Do you want to go the easy way or the hard way?" I chose the hard way, clawing, kicking, screaming. I tried to break free. One man had my upper body, the other had my legs. So she basically was grabbed from her bed in the middle of the night, taken to the airport, put on a plane, and sent to this school. Most of the kids there were like me, disobedient ravers from conservative families and ADHD kids who got kicked out of school. A lot of kids were gay or gayish, which upset their religious parents. Foster system floaters came from bad situations that had nothing to do with them, but they had to be parked somewhere that looked okay on paper. And she basically experienced a plethora of abuse there, and the main thing that they had to do was rap, which is where all the kids got in the same room and basically tattled on each other, emotionally berated each other, but it was all of the group would team up on one person until they broke down and cried, and then afterwards they were all forced to hug and snuggle it out. That's the objective of rap, to force a person past the last jagged inch of what they can stand. So then Paris, while she was scrubbing the toilets, kicked a window out, climbed out, and made a run for it. She escapes. They put her back in these schools like 10 times, and she escapes every time. She's motherfucking Harry Houdini, like dislocating her fucking shoulders to sneak through the crack. She ran away from the school, got to a bar and used the payphone and called her aunt Kyle, and on the phone said to Kyle, like, "This school is abusive. They are abusing me. Can you please come pick me up? I can't call my parents because they don't believe me about all the shit that is going on in the school." Her aunt Kyle says, "Yeah, of course. Okay, stay right there, honey. I'll come pick you up." She calls the cops on her and they take her back to the school. She equates the abuse that she experienced at these schools, specifically the rap, with a lot of the problems with her kind of mean girl, party girl era, because she was experiencing PTSD and also mirroring the like mean, aggressive, harmful language that was shown to her at these schools. Not saying this is an excuse, but it's definitely an explanation. Like, if that behavior is modeled to you, of course you would act that way. Talking about this, she takes a quick detour into the Bimbo Summit, which is an iconic moment of history, Hot Girl D-Day, in which this photo was taken. I understand why the media wanted to pit us against each other. It sold papers. It generated clicks. That blizzard of flashing lights created a dozen or so versions of a classic photo. And those images have generated millions of dollars in licensing and royalties. Not for us, of course. Brittany, Lindsay, and I get exactly zero of those dollars. I look back on some of the things I said in the years after I left Provo in the throes of PTSD, and I'm mortified, horrified. I'm grossed out because that means those creepy people got inside my head. Saying I drank to dull the pain, that's an explanation, not an excuse. I don't remember half the stuff I said when I was being a blacked out idiot. I'm not denying it because coming from the CDU system, I had a severely damaged filter. My ability to trust people was systematically destroyed, so getting close to anyone made me feel vulnerable and raw, and as a result, I said the worst things about the people I loved the most. Then they send her to a worse school that's more of an army training, horrible abusive school. Physical abuse happens. This place was shut down later because kids died in it. When they were transferring her in the airport, she ran away again by kicking one of them basically over with a door. She slammed open the stall and pushed one over and ran away to the Hilton hotel in the airport, queen. And then she called her mom and her mom sent her back to the school. She goes to this horrible school. She escapes there with a younger woman again. They go to a campsite and a woman helps them, drives them away, and they almost get on a train. They get stopped again, taken back to this horrible place. She escapes again, stays with a friend in Bel Air, gets on a plane to New York, and is with this friend still, and then her dad finds her and still sends her back. And then she finally gets into the worst of these places. It's basically a prison. She's assigned a number. There's a solitary confinement that they sent these children to, in which they put them in a cold cement room with nothing, and they took away their clothes so they couldn't unalive themselves. It's really, really dark. And she was at that final school for 11 months, and then she turned 18 and could leave. So now we're entering the third part of the book, which is talking about her party girl era, her time after leaving these horrible schools in Provo, and the beginning of the simple life and her explosive media career. It was liberating and terrifying, and I was so there for it. The first thing I did was dye my hair back to a Barbie platinum blonde. I'm a natural blonde if you don't count hair color. Feeling golden, I raided Nikki's closet and hit the clubs. This is just a passage that I loved, in which she has 5 different phones, one for work, one for personal, one for Europe, one to give her number to people who ask for it and she would feel too mean, saying no, and then one just for prank calls. Can I get rich enough that I have a phone for just prank calls? It's kind of hilarious to me when people assume I was putting myself out there because I craved attention like a pound puppy. I loved feeling special, of course, but I started making real money when I realized that I was an amplifier and attention was the power cord. I transformed attention into a marketable commodity to benefit brands I believed in, including my own. Then, because you can't have a moment of peace in this fucking book, Harvey Weinstein shows up. Because sure, no, because that's probably good. That's good. She was trying to sell a friend's movie, and he was there. I wanted Harvey Weinstein to see a woman who belonged in business, classy, beautiful, castable, and different from all the other 19-year-old girls with big movie star dreams. The next night, I attended an American Foundation for AIDS research event. Harvey saw me across the room and called out to me. I tried to pretend I didn't see him and walked away. He followed me. I walked faster. He walked faster. I headed for the ladies' room with my unicorn trot and locked myself in a stall before he came in. He pounded on the stall door and yanked at the handle, yelling gross, drunk nonsense like, "You want to be a star?" And I was just trapped in there where the fuck is a bathroom window when you need one? Until the French security man came in and forced him out of the ladies' room. He was yelling, "This is my event. I'm Harvey Weinstein," but they didn't understand or didn't care. No moment of peace for Paris. At this point in her life, when she was convinced to make a sex tape with her older adult boyfriend when she was 19. I don't remember much about the night he wanted to make a videotape while we made love. He had often said it was something he did with other women. I kept making excuses. I was tipsy and tired from a long night of partying. The lighting wasn't good. My hair and makeup were beyond. He told me I always looked gorgeous no matter what, and that it wouldn't matter anyway because this wasn't a performance. It was just for us and no one else would ever see it. And then he told me that if I wouldn't do it, he could easily find someone who would. And that was the worst thing I could think of. To be dumped by this grown man because I was a stupid kid who didn't know how to play grown-up games. The world thinks of me as a sex symbol. And I'm here for that because symbol literally means icon. But when people saw that sex tape, they didn't say icon. They said slut. They said whore, and they weren't shy about it. And this sex tape gets leaked when she is on The Simple Life and famous. It's not like it was leaked, although it would be horrible to release a sex tape regardless. It was a very pointed attack to make money off of a successful young woman. I will say that she's talking now about starting The Simple Life, which is basically a TV show where her and Nicole Richie are very rich LA girls and they go and work on a farm. While The Simple Life had just wrapped, Paris realized that she was pregnant and got an abortion. Everything I knew about myself was at war with everything I'd been raised raised to believe about abortion. No one can ever know how hard it is to face this impossible choice unless she's faced it herself. It's an insanely private agony that's impossible to explain. The only reason I'm talking about it now is that so many women are facing it and they feel so alone and judged and abandoned. I want them to know that they're not alone and that they don't owe anyone an explanation. Then she talks about when she found out that her sex tape was going to be leaked and she called the guy and begged him not to release it. I called him and begged him, please, please, please don't do this. He sounded distant and cool, saying it was too late. It was already out there. He said that he had every right to sell something that belonged to him, something that had a lot of financial value, more value than my privacy, obviously, my dignity, my future. Then she was crying about this and got on a flight back to the US. She was in Australia at the time, and the woman next to her asked her if she was okay and consoled her, and then had a recorder on her the entire time and sold that transcript to Us Weekly, and they ran it with the headline, Paris Hilton exclusive, my side of the story, which is just seemingly fully illegal. No matter what I do, despite everything I've accomplished in the past 2 decades, 90% of the articles written about me see fit to mention it. It wouldn't matter if I solved climate change by inventing a Fanta-powered bullet train. The headline would be, Planet Saved by Paris Hilton, who did sex tape when she was 19. And this is the time that I found out that her sex tape is dedicated to the victims of 9/11. I would not have had the poor taste to dedicate a porn flick to the victims of a terrorist attack. Seriously, what the actual fuck does that even mean? And like, fair enough. That should have been a red flag number 1. The victims don't need that. Also, they don't need a sex tape dedicated to them. And what does that even fucking mean? It baffles me, and I've been thinking about it constantly. On the heels of this, Hugh Hefner, again, this book is just full of the worst men in the world. You won't escape them. You want Hugh Hefner? Well, you got him. You want Harvey Weinstein? Well, you got him. Hef really wanted me to do a Playboy cover. He kept offering me more and more money, saying I wouldn't have to be totally naked, just topless. Even when he offered 7 figures, I turned it down because I knew my mom would lose her mind, and because I had already been branded as a slut after the sex tape. First of all, 7 figures. But then anyway, Playboy had honored her as the sex star of the year, which means that they could call it news, and ran her as the centerfold in Playboy anyway. And she wasn't, it was like more like a boudoir sexy shoot that she'd already done a while ago, not a naked shoot. But still, what the fuck? At this point, then she apologizes for some of the things in her problematic past. I screwed up sometimes. I said some things that I wouldn't say now. I hurt people's feelings, and I'm sorry. I drank a lot and had some unfortunate moments. Some I can laugh about, others not so much. Look, I've done and said some things I'm not proud of. I used to wear those horrific Von Dutch caps. I once went to a Playboy Mansion Halloween party dressed as sexy Pocahontas. At 18, I got drunk and performed a totally inappropriate version of Snoop Dogg's Gin and Juice at a party, and yes, I knew all the lyrics. When I was put on the spot in an interview, I pretended I voted for Donald Trump because he was an old family friend and owned the first modeling agency I signed with. The truth is even worse. I didn't vote at all. Am I standing by those choices? Would I make the same choices again knowing what I know now? Of course not. None of that reflects the person that I am now. People evolve, we have a capacity to learn, and we all make mistakes when we're young. You wake up one morning and say, wow, that was not a good look, and you make it right if you can. You apologize in private where it counts and in public if it helps. I'm not pretending to be like the Dalai Lama in Louboutins, which is a great title. I'm just saying grace is available to all of us if we make it available to each other. South Park made a episode about her called Stupid Spoiled Whore Video Playset. So there's already a lot there. I'm the title character. She's the titular character. It also applies to Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, Tara Reid, and all the little girls who were fans, which upset me more than anything ugly they could say about me. In this episode, I guess they shoot her dog dead. When someone on the red carpet asked how I felt about the spoiled stupid whore episode, I said, oh, I didn't see it. When a journalist told Matt about my muted red carpet response, he said, that shows how fucked up she is, which is just like, shut the fuck up. Like, be quiet. Prior to Me Too, we were taught to be cool, rise above, and accept stuff like this. My not wanting to watch his cartoon about my dog being shot and me coughing up ejaculate, that's evidence of how fucked up I am. Sexualized bashing of young women is worse than politically incorrect. It's dangerous, and it's boring, and it's a failure of imagination. How do we not see that the treatment of it girls translates to the treatment of all girls in our culture? Then the 4th part of the book opens with Paris talking about being arrested for having a DUI. Here she kind of plays it down and says she only had 1 margarita on an empty stomach, and that's why, so she really wasn't even that drunk. I'm just gonna say it, I don't think that's a good look. I just don't think you should drunk drive. But the things that happened to her afterwards are quite troubling, and the judge decides to make an example of her, which means he kind of wanted to punish her for being a woman that exists outside the lines of what he deems to be acceptable, which is super cool. It's a really cool way for a judge to act. He sentenced me to 45 days in jail and specified that I had to spend time in a maximum security for violent offenders, not the glamour slammer for non-violent offenders, or on house arrest like most people would in a similar situation. Before she turned herself in to go to prison, she went to the MTV Awards, which wouldn't be my move, to be honest, Paris. That wouldn't be my move. I would maybe just, spend the night at home. She talks about how Sarah Silverman, the comedian, was hosting at the time. Paris Hilton is going to jail, she said, and a chorus of cheering and hooting went up. So many of these people regularly partied at my house, and now they were laughing and celebrating my humiliation. Later, when Paris and her sister brought this up on their podcast, Sarah Silverman apologized, which I thought was very classy, and said that it didn't age well and that comedy is not all evergreen, and she shouldn't have said it. Revisiting the aughts from a post-Me Too Time's Up perspective is wrenching. I had fun. Tons of fun, and I refuse to remember it any other way. Other than a few occasions that left me curled up in a ball, I didn't let haters get to me, because honestly, we took it for granted, didn't we? Girls like me assumed we would be judged and belittled. We expected girls to be sexualized and then condemned for their sexuality, punished for both silence and speaking out, told we should accept responsibility for our choices, and then called crazy or stupid or slutty if we didn't live by the rules other people chose for us. And now the rest of her life is basically dedicated to shutting down those horrible schools she was in. I've made multiple trips to Washington, D.C. to meet with legislators and White House staff about the desperately needed changes in laws pertaining to the regulation and oversight of the troubled teen industry. We want trapped kids in treatment to know we're here for you, and we want institutional abusers to know we're coming for you. Then, that's really it.
Hi, I'm editing now, and I realized that my camera cut out for the outro. I really, really love this book. I would really recommend it. Obviously, I can't comment on Paris as a person. I don't know her, and her apologies are not mine to accept, but I thought as a work of literature, it was a great, interesting memoir about what it is like to be the victim of misogyny, and especially misogyny in the early 2000s. If you want to know about like the other books that I read, I have my Instagram and my STORYGRAPH in the description below. On my Instagram, I post like regular shit, but I also have a highlight that is all the books I read this year, and I review them. And then on my STORYGRAPH, that's just like a place where I track the books that I'm reading. You can see the books that I'm reading as I read them. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.